Here in my undisclosed location here in England somewhere, off the government map and off the grid. I thought it might be worth talking a little bit about some experiences I had with extraterrestrial interdimensional beings. And I had an experience I recalled, and I don't know exactly when in my life. It might have been when I lived in Texas, I don't know. I've never talked about it openly. I have privately with people before. And it's not something I can really go into a lot of detail about because I don't remember a lot of it. All I know is I'd been involved with some kind of beings that had come back in time from Earth's distant future. They were very scientific, very rational. And as I was exploring and recalling this memory, I remember them talking, men and women that were talking to me. And I can remember what I was saying, but I couldn't remember what they looked like right away. And I remember coming to I was like, having these dialogues, and I was saying things like, "Are you going to eat me, or are you going to hurt me?" And they said, "No, we won't eat you. We look the way we do through a biological evolution, leftover evolution of our ancestry. But we are not going to harm you." And they were interested in my interaction with a common house cat. They said, "We won't harm this animal. Hold the animal, pet the animal." And I was. And one of them said to the other, and it was all very, very clearly spoken English for courtesy, I guess courtesy to me, because they felt any of their dialogue among themselves. Because I asked that, you don't obviously speak English, but you're speaking to each other in English, and then they were very clear to say, well, we felt that was only fair in your interaction with us, that we spoke so you could understand us. And that was sort of a rule of theirs when dealing with, if they went to someone in China, they all would have been speaking Chinese. If they went to Germany, it'd all be all German. But at the same token, there was a need, on that same note, there was also some need to suppress the memory. And it was very important that it was completely suppressed, or at least most of it. As I was petting the cat, I kissed the cat, and, "Oh, I love you, you're sweet." And then one of them said to the other, "The genetic transfers through this interaction of affection for this animal." And the female spoke to me, and I was dealing with the female a lot. And the others were talking to me. They were just men. They were like men and women. But then as I began to remember, they weren't human looking. They were cat people. They were roughly human-sized cat people. But they were all black. They were not aliens from other stars or whatever. They'd made it very clear to me that they were from Earth's distant future, that they had arrived into the past to obtain some genetic material, to obtain some record. They said that what they found in their archaeology were records, information stored on discs and things, but it was badly degraded, as near as they could tell. The end of the human race was quick and relatively sudden. Now, I am not. I know I don't ask you to believe any of this ever happened to me, and I'm certainly not trying to persuade you to think there's an end of the world, and I'm not saying there is. It's just what I recall. I don't like to say to the public, I'm one of those people that says the world will end. I don't do that. So this is why, for 7 years, since I've been talking about Beniko and my experiences together, the extraterrestrial human hybrid girl and our deep, intimate connection, I've so often negated some experiences that I know were experiences because I can recall it any time of my day or night, any experience I'm having in my ordinary life here. I can, oh yeah, I remember the cat people, and then they took me and they did this and we spoke, and I can recall it each time, and I can write down 2012, yada yada, this is what I remember, leave it, put it on the shelf, come back to that diary 5 years later, don't read that page, write down what I think I can remember again, and then compare the note to 5 years earlier, and it's identical. I mean, so I know this is an experience. This actually happened. And what's really kind of sobering and a bit frightening for me, though they were very peaceful and benevolent, very kind, it really doesn't make any difference how kind and wonderful they were. It's what they were telling me. They were telling me, and in fact, what they showed me. Allegedly. Now, I don't know if it's a viewing screen I'm seeing, they're just testing my reaction. They said they were not telepaths. They weren't telepathic projecting or anything like this. They really had no idea of the aliens visiting the Earth at this time. They had no idea. They knew it was happening. And again, they were trying to investigate human genome to extract the non-human DNA that had been put into many people, for whatever reasons. There were not millions of people or billions. Scientists are generalizing too much, and they're telling the whole human race is a, yeah, but yes, the human race has a descent and was propagated by another civilization. But what they were after were those abductees, the contactees with Greys and Zetas, and they were trying to abstract. Those people had the highest degree of non-human DNA, and they wanted it for their own survival. The Earth, they came back in time. I don't exactly have a time date. I know it was 3 million years in the future. It was far away in the future. I don't know. It was millions of years from now. And purportedly they took me into that future, according to my recollection. And I looked out of purportedly a window. I can't say it was. It might have been a view screen. I might have never even left Texas. I might have never even left the time frame I was in. It might have just all been some kind of a test. Being non-telepaths, you don't, unlike other experiences with telepathic beings, you could say for sure they're not lying. I could feel that we're all love, and they weren't harming me, but they were very honest and rational and very real and very, very specific and very grounded and very down. And there was a very sombering moments with them. Very, very, very. It's almost like visiting a funeral home. They were treating me with a lot of respect and dignity and decency, but they were making it very clear to me they were not extraterrestrial. They weren't from other stars. And that they were, in fact, it was important for me to know. Maybe they realized I was going to remember one day, but they said it was important to know that the origins of their civilization were, in fact, contrived from house cats on Earth, one of the few survivors after the fall of the human race. And they told me how their ancestors lived in the dwellings of what was once cities until these buildings fell to pieces, and over tens of thousands of years and the centuries rolled on, many species fell into extinction, but they carried on evolving. Having a great deal of human interaction, they ended up having a jump start in evolution as far as they could tell. They suspected an alien civilization had interfered with their development, but they weren't sure, and kickstart them into existence. So they were also trying to compare the genes of the humans they came back in time to look at and their own to see if in fact that was the case. Records on the human civilization from their point, their timeline, were damaged so badly that they had come back to try to fill in the gaps. They were scientists, like any scientist. They were, good scientists, rather. Any good scientist. They were fair, rational, but black and white about everything. They weren't mean. The female was they were very intelligent. And after speaking to them, you looked past the fact they looked like, that they were in fact basically walking cats. Is what best way to describe it. It's kind of like the Planet of the Apes. It's like apes. And if you ever watch Planet of the Apes, after a while you look past the fact you're staring at a talking orangutan or a talking chimpanzee. Like Dr. Zaius or whatever in Planet of the Apes with Charlton Heston. There's this talking ape. But you start to see he's like another kind of a man. With his own conviction, his own habits, his own likes and dislikes, and everyone in this vehicle were all like that. They were all very different from each other, but they all had their own. They were just people, and then the girl said something like, "Don't." I mean, she kind of. I don't know if she was joking or not. She's like, "Don't worry, we won't eat you." When I began to, they were waking me up in the experience enough to interact with them. Otherwise, I was in some semi-state of consciousness. And when they started waking me up to interact with them, I became very frightened and very nervous that I was dealing with large black panther people standing there. Panthers is what the best way to describe it would be like staring at a room full of walking panthers with slightly larger skulls. Their craniums were larger. Their eyes were a bit more elongated than ordinary cats. Beyond that, they were panthers. They were large black panthers, human size, 5-6 feet tall. And the female just calmly says, "Don't worry, we won't eat you." But they still had the fangs and the teeth. And I said, "But you have those teeth." And then one of them said, "This is just very scientifically said this is just an evolutionary remnant of our ancestral past. They serve us no purpose now." And then they were telling me that they're no different than me. They called themselves human beings. They said, "We're human beings, just as you are a human being." And I felt very argumentative in that point. And at the time, I was like, "You're not a human being." I went, "You're not human beings. You're cats." And I thought, "You're aliens, alien." And then the other one, the male was very quick about it. "No, we're not aliens." And they called me by name, Jason. They said, "We're from your future." And the female said, "Every species in this time frame you're living in, of the big cats and other species of felines, are all extinct. They all go into extinction." And they said, along with more than 75% of all life on Earth, including, and then this man finishes her sentence, yes, and he says, including the human civilization, they're all gone. They had one of them interrupted and was like, "There are others that believed that there were remnants of the human civilization that carried on, but in such small numbers, but it carried on evolving. They didn't know if they were still on the earth or not." It was kind of one of those, like we don't know if Bigfoot's real or not, so people run around. For them, it was the same thing. Are there others living on Earth? They didn't know. They didn't call it Earth, and I don't remember what they called it. In the vehicle, there was some strange music playing. It sounded like Jamaican bongo music. A lot of drums and bongo, kind of like a Jamaican, very colorful. Almost sounded reggae. I don't know. It was really, really very odd. I don't remember what they called themselves, but they had a name for their civilization. That's my cat trying to go out. hold on a minute. He's got doctor vet. He's got the vet tomorrow, and if I let him out, I'm not supposed to let him out. He's got some. He's got an operation. If I let him out, like he's wanting to go out. If I let him out, he may feed off someone else's doorstep, come back. He's not supposed to have anything to eat prior to going to the doctor. But anyways, I don't know. That's all I know, and I don't want to scare people or put people. But there's something very. Every time I go back to this, come here. This experience, this memory. Over the last 7-8 years, since a lot of stuff's been coming back to me, there's been this. I don't know how to describe this. There's like a very. It's very sobering. You know, you could almost like hear a song in your head, something going. You know, because this, if this is true, then I don't know. I don't know what to say to you. I mean, go get a bomb shelter. I don't know. I don't know how it ended. Anyways, I was looking at this view screen. I'll get back to that just for a minute. And I was looking at this portal or whatever I'm going to say. They're telling me that they took me into the future and they were showing me the Earth. And I saw a very peculiar setting. In the distance, I saw hills covered in green and vines, and across these valleys that went on and on and on. They called it the Sacred Valley. What lay beyond are the last remains of the human civilization. And it was very sacred to them. It was forbidden ground to go in there, and they said that this was very sacred. They treated it with a lot of respect. What I saw were these peculiar rectangular and square protrusions sticking out of the ground, no more than 1 meter high, but they were very large, and they were covered in vines and grass. And there were hundreds of them. Everywhere there was hundreds of these weird, peculiar squares and rectangle shapes, grass shapes, just grass hills shaped, green hills shaped like rectangles and squares. And they went on hundreds and hundreds of them. And I asked this one girl, a cat girl, whatever, I says, what am I looking at? They said that's the remains of what you call New York City. It was like nothing had been reduced to nothing but ruins of just basically like Egyptian ruins, only much, much older. It looked very, very ancient. And they said their ancestors had lived there for centuries and took shelter there. They said that the black cats had the highest genetic intelligence and DNA than any other of the species of cats. That they found that they were, I don't know why they spoke of it very distantly, but they said that the cats of our time were very genetically similar to them. So they knew they knew they were quite different from. They knew they were very different, but yet they were doing genetic tests that had involved. Well, they were just trying to detective work, trying to piece together. One of them, the girl spoke to me and said that we know that in the timeline, you've kick-started, she didn't say kicks, you started a movement. You've helped start a movement of the awareness of other civilizations on Earth. That I was a part of some kind of that I was one of the seed corns that helps kickstart and inspire others. But I'm not. But she said to me, but you're not going to be given any credit for this. You're not being given any recognition that you're the one that helped start a lot of this. And so she was just saying that I mean, they knew my end. They knew the end of me. They knew how my life played out and how it ended. And it ended pretty mundanely. and it wasn't, anything. I didn't become anything, really. I wasn't, anybody. Um, she did, I mean, it was, they seemed really kind of downhearted. They just seemed a bit depressed, a bit kind of, you got the sense that they were, in dealing with me, there was a lot of respect, and yet at the same time, almost aggravation. It was kind of like, well, you're a part of the civilization that came before us and was responsible for a lot of planetary destruction and poisoning and issues of involving extinction of species, where they were in fact telling me that they had contact with civilizations in their time frame that were out there in the galaxy. But then one of them told me, we don't have the division and scared, paranoid reactions that your civilization, the human race had, and so we're more accepting than you. And so they were much more evolved in that sense. And so it just became. I never felt like they were putting me down. But they had, they were time travelers. And they were from another time. Most interesting. But they were all black. It was like a race of Black Panthers. It was very, very sad. I was very, very, very saddened to hear all the conservation attempts and everything, in fact, that we ever tried to do to save the big cats was gone. They were all gone. And that saddened me. That really did. That really bothered me a lot. And I was like, well, is there any way, I was like saying things to them like, is there any way to take some of them from our time frame into the future and bring them there? I don't remember the reaction to that. I don't remember. Might have been something like we have, or some scientific philosophy, well, we can't or won't, or haven't got the means. I know they said a lot of the earth had been poisoned, and they hadn't really given me a definite reason how it ended. What in fact happened. I didn't get the impression nuclear war or anything like that. I don't know. I don't remember. But there you go. We're right across the cat people. And apparently a lot of you have too, you experiencers. Maybe they're telling some of you they're from another planet. Maybe they've got some reason to tell a small white lie rather than give you the whole big story, the truth. Maybe they felt I could handle this. I found it rather depressing and a bit frightening. Not them. But there's so much I don't talk about, and I just, so many times in my life when I'm gazing off into space, I'm listening to a song, I'm reflecting on those memories and what they told me, and I'm thinking, I'm looking at people around me in the buildings, cars and cities, and I'm like, this may not last forever. It may not be forever. You hear the abductees, contactees telling everybody that the Earth is going to ascend into the fifth dimension, into a different density. Well, maybe it would appear that way if, say, 5 billion people died in a single afternoon from a nuclear war. humanity's consciousness would seem to ascend into another dimension, into another Earth. It would certainly appear that way in their perspective, but be completely and wholly unaware of the fact that they all simply died, and that the Earth itself remained in the third dimension, and other life eventually evolved and took over, built a civilization, and looked back into its distant past and said, who were they? Who were they? The ones that fed and took care of our ancestors. Who were they? In the meantime, humanity and the billions, it would be difficult to explain to each other after billions dying in a single day that in fact the entire planet did not change its density. If that's scientifically that's in fact scientifically impractical, and it's not impossible but implausible. That didn't happen. The Earth remained within this solar system with the other planets it shared with, and the sun, and the moons, and indeed this galaxy and all the billions of other planets within it. But it was you, the human race, that changed your density from physical matter to etheric matter when you all went into extinction one day. You were being given one message, one linear message from extraterrestrials who told you, be ready for the conscious ascension. In other words, they were saying, get ready for your extinction. And they were trying to put it in the nicest way possible. I don't know, it's just one interpretation. It's my own interpretation. It's possible. I didn't say it was the only one, just one of several. I don't like to sit here and sound like I'm speculating all day. I mean, this connection with Beniko, I can feel and know we're singularly one soul. I can know a lot of what she knows, but with a higher, more advanced mind, I don't have the privy to the knowledge, all of the knowledge within her. Some of that's a bit censored, but you're not going to know that. Obviously, it would be giving way too much. And in all the time travel shows, they say that you're endangering things, you know too much. In any case, the message is positive, is love and hope. You go around saying this kind of stuff in a conference, you're going to get eggs thrown at you, you're going to get beat up. People don't want to hear things like this. Even though there may be an afterlife existence, they reject it in the face of hard facts and say, no, I will live forever. I will take my money with me to my grave. I will have everything I ever earned in my life will go with me in that little box. No, it won't. No, it really won't. But you got to get ready for what's out there when you're gone. There's another reality. What kind of treasures have you stored up there? What are you waiting? What are you ready to accomplish when you reach this place? And it's sad to think that was pretty much ultimately if that's true, then the human race's only greatest accomplishment was the fact that it simply got to some other etheric reality. It never really evolved into anything else. Maybe some civilizations are just too grounded in the third dimension to evolve. And sometimes evolution is forced upon them in a single afternoon. When they all simply perish in nuclear fire. When they all woke up the next day, it was a beautiful day, a beautiful Earth. And all was well. And every family member and everyone they ever knew was there. The galaxy is a cold thing. Space is cold and indifferent. It doesn't care. The Earth healed itself. And others carried on. And they love us, respect us, and are sad for us. I guess it depends on what you want to believe. Your 5D ascension, from one perspective, not the only one, I'll reserve what I have learned from Beniko on those points of the future of mankind. I mean, I have said in some videos already, but again, you get beat on the head if you go to say stuff that starts to sound like Armageddon or the end of the world and things like that. But there's always hope. There's always hope. And please, don't lose hope. Don't get depressed. There's hope. I believe this. I've seen hopeful things. It may have only been they came back from an alternate future. And there are many, many. But it was a sad one. They paid such respect to us, such homage. A lesson in impermanence, a Tibetan monk would say. Nothing lasts forever. And some races on this planet will evolve on and on. But then the human race, unique in its own way, had apes for ancestors. Very aggressive and territorial. Perhaps felines have an advantage in that regard. You ever see an ape that could purr? There is a point in this. Purring represents love and affection. It would be 1.5 million years before an ape could talk to show any affection. Their ancestors are doing it right away. On the cat's purr, the dawn breaks in the hope for tomorrow. We are